If you think that we are going to sunburn and enjoy the sun here in the terrace, think again, because it's not the case. This year it started a bit differently because we moved to Tenerife at the end of December. I bring my own bike, MTB, which is very uncommon, but I wanted to explore an island more, and we will see how it went after 1 month. We live in El Tanque, which is somewhat 600 meters of elevation up. That means it's currently like 12 to 13 degrees Celsius. It might sound like a lot compared to what we currently have in Lithuania, but let's just add wind, humidity, no sun, and it's not that Tenerife-like. So in this video I will cover the bike in few parts which were applied to it, as well as the location where I driven mostly. It's northern west of Tenerife, El Tanque it's written, but about everything right from the start. So yeah, it's my Scott Spark RC Pro model. There are 3 things I can point out about the bike itself, and one of them is tire selection. I went with 2.3 Continental Cross Kings. Basically, it's just because they have a lot of threads per inch, and because terrain here is volcanic-like, it has a lot of sharp stones and rocks. So for that reason, I thought that as much threads per inch would be the best idea. And actually, you can have a look how the tire looks like after 1 month of usage. So it's very worn out, I would say. You can see that there are half protection in the center already worn out, but it's probably to be expected on such terrain. The front tire is definitely a bit better looking, just because you don't skid and slide with the front tire. But in general, I think 2.3 was perfect choice for this. And it's also worth mentioning that at front I have 30mm Dukes wheels, and at the back it's 28mm internal width. So for that reason I have a bit wider front. On those rough terrains it was just perfect. And you can see that it's a bit dirty, but that just to showcase the reality of what it's like. In the mountains there are pretty muddy areas, and once you come back whole dirty, you don't have any other choice just to go there in the terrace and make some cleaning. Thankfully there is a proper area for that. Second thing I would like to point out about the bike is that I went with the slacker version. Slacker means the front fork goes a bit more in front, so that way it's smaller angle between the frame and the fork. That way I have a longer wheelbase, and that actually helps on the rough terrain and all sort of single tracks. It doesn't help on the climbs at all. And trust me, there are enough climbs to make you bust it, but it is as it is. When you go to the mountains, it's also very important to consider what type of chainring you are going to use. And I went with 32 tooth Garberg's one. I chosen it at some point during the season just because it has enormously huge tips, and that kind of helps to prevent dropping off the chain. But I must admit that Absolute Blacks are way better in terms of ovality and that feeling of oval. This was a test, and maybe I will use Garberg's at some point in the future, but next one will be definitely Absolute Black. In case if you know something about Tenerife, that way is Teide Volcano, but you can see that on the cloudy day it's not visible at all. And apart from that, the bike didn't have any other issues except the brakes. On the rear end I kind of lost the brakes, and I have separate video about that. You can check it out in the corner of the screen now. Yesterday I got myself into a situation where Brakes on descent almost completely disappeared on the rear end. So yeah, the bike itself lasted surprisingly well during the January. And one thing I could celebrate is that before coming here to Tenerife, I haven't tested it out after I did the maintenance. So it was kind of, hopefully it will work. Surprisingly, it did. So all the thing I did for the bike went fine, the bearing change and all that stuff for the first time. Nothing, at least for now, turned down on me. And oh, one other thing, there was a change of a damper on the SID, and surprisingly, it still worked. So I have around 800 kilometers on the bike already, and from time to time I have to a bit tighten up the cable. So yeah, you just turn it counterclockwise. An important thing that you should do it once it's fully unlocked, so on fully open position without pushing the fork. You just turn out the barrel a bit and lock it out fully, and you'll see that it works perfectly, if of course it's not yet damaged. So 100 kilometers on the fork still works. Thanks Hawaii Express for doing an amazing job with this fork, which I was going to replace, but if it's going to last that good, who knows, maybe SID will receive apologies from me, we'll see. All right, so leaving the bike, we can have a look at the destination we are at. So it's El Tanque, meaning that El Tanque is at the northwest part of an island of Tenerife. There in front you can see Puerto de la Cruz, and that way you don't have way to see anything else. But in general, there is Teide, and I have ridden in those mountains down the Teide quite a lot, but because it's this type of day, you don't see much. So the place where we lived is in a small city. The only downfall of this area is because it's nearby the main street, and that means this street is crossed by the traffic going from Puerto de la Cruz and all that part of an island. So that's the only downfall. The good and the bad thing about El Tanque is that it's 600 meters of elevation up, so it's a bit cold here during that winter time. But the good thing, there are plenty of areas right with a small tiny catch. You either return back home after a ride on the downhill, so from the mountains down here, or our way, you go down somewhere there, or there, or there, and then you have to climb those 600 meters back just to return back home. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is there are literally no flats. So the best flat area you can find around this city is like 5-6 degrees of elevation either way. So yeah, if you want to have flat riding, El Tanque is not the way to go, simply because you will always have to climb either back home or in the morning of your day. So that's kind of it. I've never been here, but let's have a look what it looks like here. Basically, I have ridden almost every road around El Tanque, and one other good thing about El Tanque is that if you climb up or if you go down, you have multiple ways to go back home. Of course, some are tarmac ones, others are gravel or just loose rocks, but that's the good thing, you don't have to always ride on the same location. For me, it's good because when creating routes, I always try to create paths where I haven't ridden yet. That way I have a look at my heat map as well as others' heat maps and try to create something unique all the time. Definitely not always it works out, but you can have a look how it worked out here. When you live somewhere for a month like we did here, it's a nice thing because in such small city you get to know every street, you know where everything is and where every street directs you to, so that's kind of nice thing to experience. And like I always tend to say is that at every place you live, It gives you something and it takes it away as well. That's definitely the case. It's something bad because it was locked. Anyways, it was a nice view and you could have take a look where I was ridden. If we talk about the numbers, I ridden already around 800 kilometers or so, maybe even more. Funny thing is that it differed very much how I ridden the first 2 weeks and the other 2 weeks, simply because in the first 2 weeks I tried to find the easiest pathways to go back home and less risky, and in the next 2 weeks it was kind of a bit of different story. Also, it's worth mentioning that here around El Tanque there are not much trails which are supported, so basically no trail network around here, or at least I didn't find out too much of them, but that really doesn't mean that you don't have where to ride. Also, I'm going to create a video about my top 5 destinations here to ride in northwest region of Tenerife Island. So if you are into mountain biking and you would love to have a look where to ride on your own, make sure to check this out. And in case you find this type of content useful, do not hesitate to subscribe to the channel. That kind of showcases me whether I'm on the right path or not. So if it's interesting, let me know in the comments. And without further ado, I'm going back home because it's really cold out there on 600 meters of elevation. And in case someone tells you that in Tenerife it's only hot, dry and sunny, well, maybe it is at the southern part of an island, but make sure to check the weather forecast when you're coming to the north. And one very important thing, don't believe in the weather forecast, because in El Tanque here, it shows like every day is sunny without any clouds, etc. But in reality, I will add few clips how it looks like when it's forecasted as a sunny and warm day. Oh, and actually I kind of forgot one thing. Don't forget to check the videos about my top 5, maybe even more, locations where to ride around El Tanque and north and west region of Tenerife Island. That's it. Thanks for your time, and I hope to see you around. So that's how El Tanque looks from the rooftop. Another rooftop.